Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to this week's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and man, I really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to check it out. I know that these longer advanced bass fishing videos are sort of a commitment to watch, so thank you very much for taking some time to do that. Guys, we're going to be talking about fishing finesse worms in today's video, and this is not as simple as it sounds. A lot of people think when you're fishing finesse worms, you're fishing light line, weenie worming around, and that is part of the technique, but you can power fish with finesse worms. So what I'm going to do here in today's video is I've got about 10 or 12 of my favorite type of finesse worms, and I'm going to go through each one of them. I'm going to explain the situation that I like to use them in, show you how to rig them, the tackle setup for it, conditions they work in the best, and I think it's really going to add up to some good fish. And I think it's going to give you a whole new appreciation on fishing finesse worms, because you can fish finesse worms in muddy water, in clear water, everything in between. They're just a great way to catch numbers of bass, and you can also catch good ones on it. Also, guys, before we get started here, if you guys want to give something back and you really get something out of these seminar type format videos we do, best thing you guys can do to support the channel is just to go into my links in the description and use and bookmark my Tackle Warehouse link. I'm going to link all of the products today that we talk about in the video into my Tackle Warehouse links there. And if you guys purchase those products, the channel gets a small percentage of the commission on each sale. And also we got my Solar Bat sunglass link in there. We got the links to on the water lessons, just a bunch of good stuff to show your support for the channel. And also, if you haven't subscribed to Advanced Bass Fishing, I'd like to invite you to do so. It's a good way to help out too, so much appreciated. Okay guys, we'll go through this here a little bit. I'm gonna explain to you each one of these worm profiles and what they're for. And first of all, one of the things I want to reiterate on this is when you're fishing finesse with finesse worms out there, there's the diversity of conditions that a finesse worm works in based upon the color and the profile of the worm is wide ranging. I mean, I've literally caught bass on finesse worms in anything between 6 inches of visibility and 30 foot of visibility and everything in between. So we're just going to sort of have a wide-ranging conversation. I'm going to go through each one of these and explain to you how I set them up, how I rig them, how I like to fish them, and just the whole overall technique that revolves around each one of them. Okay, so I'm just going to go down the line here. The first one I want to talk about, guys, is this, and these are the ones I'm going to show you here. These are all either Zoom finesse worms or Robo Worms, one of the two. But the first one is this Magnum Finesse worm that the Zoom makes here. Now this, you can see here, this is a 4.5 inch long worm, but it's a larger profile. It's pretty fat. It's actually fatter than a traditional trick worm. Therefore, in a situation like this is what I consider one of the best finesse power fishing baits out there. So when I'm using this Magnum Finesse worm out here, based upon the color of the worm I'm using and the situation I'm fishing it in, there's a lot of different situations it works in. So first of all, let's talk about the black here. This black, when you're talking about a power fishing finesse worm, guys, I have caught tons of fish on this black Magnum Finesse worm in dirty water. Water visibility of 6 inches to 12 inches. This thing is excellent to use. And usually what I do with it is in the dirty water, I'm flipping it and pitching it around shallow water cover. So a lot of times I usually like to use an 1/8 ounce, no more than a 3/16 ounce sinker with it. That's the setup I like to use with it. And I'm going to show you how I Texas rig these, because you can apply this to every worm that we're going to talk about. But I want to show you how you want to Texas rig a finesse worm for flipping and pitching around shallow cover. First of all, go with a small hook. This is the Gamakatsu G Finesse hybrid worm hook in a number 1 size. You don't want to go to too big of a hook in a finesse worm, because it's going to take away from the whole aspect of being finessey, and you actually land more fish with a smaller hook. And again, guys, I'll link everything in the descriptions, hooks and everything like that. So take the straight shank, number 1 finesse worm, come through about 1/4 of an inch from it, like that. Pull all the way through. And this is what's the important part of it here. Guys, we talked about this before, you don't ever want to just hook it back in the middle of the worm like that, because you basically made this so weedless to the point where you're not even going to be able to hook the fish, because you got a tremendous amount of plastic for that thing to go through before you can hook the fish. So on all these finesse worms, not just this one, just come through and just barely skin hook it in the side like that. See how I got it just barely skin hooked? That way, you know, your worm still hangs straight, but when that fish bites it, this worm separates off of the side of that hook immediately, and you never lose the fish. And then again, guys, I'm using, on all these finesse worms, 99% of the time, I'm using an 1/8 ounce to 3/16 ounce sinker here. And normally I'll just take and I'll just peg it with a round toothpick. I've used a lot of different pegging things, guys, but I think just a round toothpick works as good as anything, because you can control how much tension that you have on the sinker by how hard, by how deep and how much you penetrate that toothpick into the slip sinker there. So this is the setup with it here. And another thing with it, guys, see how I got this rigged up here? See how even that the slip sinker is off to one side? Take some time to get it straightened out on there. Just move it around a little bit until it's straight, because a lot of times it'll sort of set to the side of the knot one time. And since it is a finesse presentation, you want it to look perfect. So that's the setup that I use for that black one there. Now the black, a couple different situations with that. A lot of it, like I said, when I'm using the black, it depends on water clarity. And that, again, the water clarity I use for the black is anywhere between 6 inches to a foot, maybe 1.5 feet. Black works really good in any type of tidal waters. If you guys are fishing like the Potomac River, the James River, any tide river, you know, black is an excellent color for that. Black is also a really good color pitching and flipping around boat docks. It's one of my favorite color finesse worms to fish. Low light conditions, off colored water, it works really good. And just pitching and flipping it around whatever shallow cover that you have available. So that's the first one there. And the colors, guys, on the Magnum Finesse worm here, black is my favorite, but I also, you know, I'll use the green pumpkin sometimes too. Now the green pumpkin, I'll pitch it and flip it if the water's a little bit cleaner. Say if that water visibility is over 2 foot, I'll go to the green pumpkin a lot of times. And also this Magnum Finesse worm, guys, it's a really good bait to rig as a shaky head. I got my butt waxed on this thing down at Lake Eufaula in Alabama. I was fishing, I was flipping boat docks down there, and my co-angler out of the back of the boat took one, actually a green pumpkin Magnum Finesse worm just like this, and he started fishing around those boat docks, and he kicked my butt on this thing. So rigging it on just on a shaky head like that's a good way to fish it if the water's a little bit cleaner on that. And also, guys, I like this 1/16 of an ounce. This is that Gamakatsu tricky head, shaky head that we talked about it before. Best shaky head on the market right here, guys. 1/16 of an ounce is the one I like for that. So that's the Magnum Finesse worms. Again, they make quite a few different colors. Colors just really dependent upon, you know, your water visibility you have. Okay, the next one we got, guys, is the old school Robo Worm. This is just this is a 6-inch Robo Worm here, just a real finessey worm. These Robo Worms, guys, they're one of the first sort of hand-poured looking finesse worm out there. Really natural, really realistic looking. These gained fame out west early on, a long time ago. And these are truly one of the best finesse worms out there as far as in really clear water situations. They make a couple different ones. This is the Robo Worm Fat, the little fat worm. And this is just the 6-inch Robo Worm here. Now, the regular Robo Worm, the thin one like this, I use this on a drop shot most all the time, whether it be the shorter size or the 6-inch one. But one of my favorite ways to fish it, and actually Aaron Martin showed me this, is to take the 6-inch Robo Worm, fish it on a drop shot, but you're not fishing it in the conventional sense that most people associate with drop shots. Most people think drop shots are sort of for deeper water, open water for suspended fish. But Aaron showed me how to drop shot this Robo Worm here in shallow water. So get you a light sinker, like an 1/8 ounce drop shot weight. Maybe it's even a 1/16 of an ounce. Put it on like a 6-inch leader and just pitch it with your spinning rod around shallow cover. Again, whatever cover is available, shallow grass, docks, wood, rocks, anything like that. Same place that you'd be pitching and flipping something else around, but just take this Robo Worm and just pitch it and flip it in that shallow water. You know, we were, when Aaron showed me this, we were actually fishing at Lake Gunnersville practicing for a Bassmaster tournament. And he was taking this Robo Worm and fishing it up in the real shallow grass, you know, right up against the bank and like 1.5 feet of water with the drop shot on the Robo Worm, catching them like that. Now the fat worm, like this, the fat worm is a really good worm. I don't drop shot the fat model here. I shaky head the fat model. This is a really good setup to use as a shaky head. So you guys set up here. Now this is going to be really productive also, and we'll talk about some more on a lake that you have a lot of spotted bass in. This is a really good setup for it. But just drop shot, or excuse me, just put this on a shaky head, a little Robo fat worm, 4.5 inch like this. Excellent weight. This will get you some bites right here. I mean, that's an edible looking tidbit, isn't it? Anytime you got some fairly clean water, you know, water visibility over 3 feet, this is going to be a good choice there. Now, next one is a true finesse worm. This is the old Lucky Strike razor worm here. This is a super small diameter worm. This is like one of the smallest diameter worms that you have out there. And guys, I have caught a ton of fish on this thing over the years. And oddly enough, I like to Texas rig it. I can't really tell you what it is, but I have caught so many fish on this little razor worm here. This back, I used to be sponsored by Lucky Strike many years ago, and I used them quite a bit then. I guess they still make them, Lucky Strike. I'm not even sure, but I'll just show you the setup I use on it. I almost won a Bassmaster tournament on Lake Norman on this razor worm, fishing it around docks. But just like that, super finessey, just casting it on your spinning outfit. Again, around any shallow cover, you know, clear. This is a clear water situation. Water visibilities of over 4 foot. This little razor worm will definitely get you some bites there. Now they also make the fatter version of the Robo Worm here. This is the regular Robo Worm in the 6 inches, and this is the 6 inch fat model here. Now again, the fat model, this is another excellent worm for just Texas rigging. Same type of deal here. Shallow water cover, you know, just fishing it around whatever, you know, targets that you have available. And rig this one up here a little bit and show you. Just a different type of a presentation. The thing about the Robo Worm, they got some really natural looking colors on there with the two-tone on there. Really good worm for clear water situation there. Okay guys, we're gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna get something to drink and we'll be back and continue on with the rest of the baits. Okay guys, moving on. I've got 5 more worms that I'm gonna talk about here. And after we go through these 5, I'm gonna take a break and we're gonna talk about the exact set of conditions and what you need to look for, seasonal patterns, different time of year that these things work good. So we'll have that part of the discussion towards the end of the seminar here. Okay, the next one, guys, I do consider this a finesse worm, although it's a little bit bigger. This is the Zoom trick worm. This is probably one of the most famous plastic worms in the country. Guy, if you told me, say, Randy, you can have one bait to fish with, it's like you got to feed yourself fishing, and you're going to have to just catch nothing but bass the rest of your life to eat. You gave me one lure to do that on, it'd be a Zoom finesse worm. This thing is a fish catching bait. Doesn't matter how you rig it. You can rig it Texas rig like we talked about. You can wacky rig it. You can put it on a shaky head. You can throw it on a Carolina rig. It's just any way that you want to fish a trick worm is a good way to catch it. It's a natural looking bait. It looks like a worm. It's always going to be good because it doesn't telegraph itself. And the trick worm, guys, this is probably the most versatile worm that you're going to use for your finesse worms. You can finesse fish with this with 6-pound line in water clarity of 15-foot clarity, or you can put you a June bug color on or a black one on, and you can pitch it and flip it in 6 inches of visibility in dirty water. It's good. There's not any place that I've fished in this country where you can't catch them on this thing. Florida, the Ozarks, Texas, up north, Tennessee, TVA lakes, anywhere. This is a fish catching bait. If I could give you guys one piece of advice in this seminar, if you don't fish a Zoom trick worm, you need to get stocked up on them. Get you a bunch of colors and start fishing it, because it's a fish catching son of a gun there. Okay, now the next one I'm going to talk about here, this one is a little bit, let me go one more before we get into the curly tails there. The last one I'll talk about is the Zoom finesse worm. Here's the Zoom trick worm next to the finesse worm here. Now the Zoom finesse worm, it's the same thing. I Texas rig this, and also I'll fish it on a drop shot and a shaky head both. It's like, this is probably the best lure that you can use for spotted bass. A 4-inch zoom finesse worm on a shaky head will catch every spotted bass in the lake. And I'll use the darker colors also for pitching and flipping around shallow cover. I've done really good in those high pressured situations by flipping a trick worm with like a little 1/8 ounce sinker on it, 15-pound line, that type of deal there. Okay, the last ones I want to talk about here, the last ones that I used is the Zoom Deadringer. Now this used to be called a ringworm. There's been a couple different companies make it. It's a little bit fatter. It's a ribbed worm with the curly tail on it. Guys, this thing has been catching fish forever. It's a good spinnerbait trailer. It's great for pitching and flipping. You can fish it on a jig head. I'll tell you a little story. The second Bassmaster tournament that I ever fished in my life was down at Sam Rayburn Lake in Texas, and I drew Tommy Martin out. And if you guys don't know who Tommy Martin is, you probably haven't been fishing very long. He won the Bassmaster Classic in 1974, and when I fished with him back at Sam Rayburn in 1986, he was at the top of his game, and he was a guide down there. And he finished, I drew him out the first day of the tournament, and he finished second in the tournament. And this is the exact bait he was fishing, was a Junebug colored ringworm on an 1/8 ounce jig head in the grass beds. It works really good on a jig head, just an open jig head setup like that. I don't really use it that much on a shaky head for some reason, but the main thing that I use it on is just pitching and flipping it on a Texas rig. And also, this is Rick Clunn's favorite spinnerbait trailer. If you guys ever have watched many videos with Rick Clunn, he talks about the ringworm all the time as a trailer. That's what he uses on a spinnerbait, and it does work really good on there. But I've caught more guys just Texas rigging it like this. And the good thing about the ringworm is you've got the tail on it. The curly tail and the ribs make it work good in a little bit more off-colored water. I've caught bass just like the trick worm all over the country on this thing, pitching it and flip it in dirty water. The last Bassmaster tournament I won was the Bassmaster Top 150 down at the Mobile Delta in Alabama. And I've been catching them flipping the jig, and they sort of got off it. And I switched to a ringworm, and I started pitching and flipping a little ringworm that last day of the tournament, and caught 3 of my key fish on it and wind up winning the tournament. So really good pitching and flipping bait. But guys, that is my selection there, as far as the finesse worms. I'm going to take a little break, and then we're going to get back to the sort of the meat of the video, and we're going to get into like seasonal patterns, specifically where you want to fish it, and all the different type of stuff that goes with that. So I'll be right back. Okay guys, what I want to do in the last part of the video here is I want to go over when each one of these worms work on a seasonal basis, as far as the seasonal patterns attached to it, and when I choose which worm based upon the time of the year. Because I think it's really critical to get the right color and size and profile of finesse worm to sort of, and the technique that goes with it to maximize your efficiency, all year long with it. Now, first of all, I don't fish a finesse worm in the wintertime. It's like, I've caught a few fish like on shaky heads with it, but for the most part, there's other baits that work good in the wintertime. So the times that I start fishing the finesse worm, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the whole season with it. The time that I first start fishing a finesse worm is when that water temperature starts to get around 50 degrees. And the first thing that I go to when that water temperature gets around 50 degrees is a shaky head on a finesse worm. Sometimes I'll use a drop shot, but a shaky head is by far my favorite setup with it. When you've got a situation where you have the lake can have a mixed species, it doesn't have to, but especially if you've got a lake that's got a decent population of spotted bass in it, in the pre-spawn time of the year, early in the year, that finesse worm on a shaky head is one of the best lures that you're ever going to use to catch fish with, especially if you have water visibility of over 3 feet. So one of the first things I do in the pre-spawn when that water temperature starts to get about 50 is I start going into the major creek arms, and I start casting that finesse worm on a shaky head around any secondary points or bluff banks or some type of channel banks. And I usually don't do that unless you've got, like I said, about 3 foot of visibility. And when I have that, I'll just get on those bluffy channel type banks, and I'll just cast out there. Usually I'm fishing like 8-pound test Seagar and Vizex line, that Megabass Whip Snake spinning rod, and slowly pick my way down those bluffy banks, just casting about every 5 or 6 feet down the bank working at anywhere between 5 to 20 foot of water, depending upon the water visibility. Now, that works really good until that water temperature starts getting, up into the upper 50s. And one thing you're going to notice when that water temperature starts getting in the upper 50s is those fish will start moving a little bit more towards the secondary points. And they set on those secondary points, staging, getting ready to move up to spawn. So I'll do the same thing, when that water temperature is 56, say to 59 degrees, I'll get out on those secondary points and start fishing the shaky head. Usually I'll mix it up with a lot of different ones. The trick worm on a shaky head is going to be my number one choice. If the water is extremely clear and I've got a big population of spotted bass, like if I'm fishing Smith Mountain Lake in Alabama or Lake Lanier, Georgia, or here in the Ozarks, I'll probably shaky head that little 4.5 inch finesse worm or that little Robo Worm fat worm on those secondary points. Now, when that water starts to getting close to 60 and those fish are getting close to spawning and want to spawn, that's when I go to the trick worm on a wacky rig, and I'll just go back in those spawning type coves. I'll put that little trick worm, either like a green pumpkin or a watermelon, just on a little number 1 Gamakatsu G finesse hook, and I'll just go in those spawning areas and just cast to the bank and just work that, wacky rig super slow back to the boat. Not all the way back to the boat. I'll just work it down. As soon as it hits the water, I'll work it, 5 feet or so. If I don't have a bite, I'll reel it in for another one. That's going to be one of the most deadliest ways that you're going to catch fish on a finesse rig. And I've never seen it not work anywhere. I mean, literally, anytime the fish are close to spawning or getting ready to spawn, that wacky rig is just one of the top producers you're ever going to have. Now, after the spawn, during the early post spawn, which we're talking about May for the most part of the country, there's a lot of different stuff going on with the finesse worm that you can catch them on. Shaky head is still going to be good. You can still catch them on points on a shaky head or just going down the bank fishing. Shaky head is a really good bait all during the month of May. They'll still hit the wacky rig. Even those fish after they're spawning, a lot of those fish are shallow, they're garden fry. Wacky rig can be really good. But this is the time of year when I start thinking about pitching and flipping those little bit more power fishing finesse worms in and around the shallow cover. So if I've got a lake that has shallow cover, like I don't care if it's gator grass or water willows or lily pads, shallow grass or something like that, I'll pitch and flip that ringworm and that Magnum Finesse worm around that shallow cover. Really, really good way to catch them with that. Now, as the summer rolls around, again, there's a lot of different things working on. The summertime is a big time of year based upon the type of lake I'm fishing. I will fish a drop shot with the little Robo Worm on there or the Zoom Finesse worm quite a bit in the summertime. Now, if the water's clear, it's a good way to catch suspended bass. It's a really good technique for that. Fishing it around bridge piers, over the top of standing timber. Shaky head can be really good all through the summertime. But the main thing that I'm looking for in the summertime is this is when I do my serious shallow power fishing with the power fishing finesse worms like the ringworm and again the Magnum Finesse worm. Now this is all about shallow cover. It's all about super shallow water and off colored water. So I'm looking for the dirtiest water in the lake in the summertime. And docks are really good too. If you got some docks and dirty water, pitching and flipping that Magnum Finesse worm and the ringworm around those docks is really good. If you got any type of shallow grass and dirty water, if you got shallow wood and dirty water, and when I'm talking about dirty water, I'm talking about water visibility of less than 2 foot, sort of in that 6 inch to 2 foot zone. Put those things again on a light sinker, like an 1/8 ounce sinker, 17 to 20 pound test Seaguar and Vizex line, and to just slowly and methodically fish that shallow cover. You'll be surprised how much better it works than a normal size lure for pitching and flipping in the summertime. You can literally, if you got a bank that's got some laydowns on it, you may go through there with like a full-size brush hog or a creature bait or jig and never get a bite, and then you come through there flipping a little finesse worm and you'll catch a limit. Really good way to fish shallow that time of year. And in the fall time of the year, there's not a lot of difference as far as, the setups I use and the type of cover. It's all dependent upon the water that I'm fishing. During the fall time of the year, again, the ringworm and the Magnum Finesse worm are my two big players for fishing shallow. And this is the time of the year that I go super, super shallow, like water depth of 1 to 3 feet. I stay with the off-colored water, docks, brush, shallow laydowns, all that type of stuff is going to be really good. And for some reason, that black and chartreuse tailed ringworm, Deadringer, is a really good fall bait. I don't know what it is about it, but I've caught a ton of fish on the black and chartreuse ringworm and also on the black Magnum Finesse worm. Black fishing around shallow cover in the fall is definitely money. Also, your drop shots are going to continue working the fall time of the year. Some lakes you're going to have a pretty decent shaky head bite, again with the same type of stuff. And you can't really go wrong with them, guys. If you're fishing and you're getting some bites on any type of lure, I don't care what it is, if you know there's some fish there, you can almost always catch more on a finesse type, slow presentation with that. They're just some of the most consistent producers that you're going to have in your box, simply because there's so many things you can do with them. And with the different profile sizes and colors, it makes them extremely versatile in a wide range of water clarities and water temperatures. And that's one of the things you'll notice about fishing lures in general. A lot of fishing lures have a limited range where they work good in, usually a correlation with water clarity. But a finesse worm's not so much, guys. I've literally caught, tons of bass in water visibility that deep on a finesse worm or down to 50 feet. I remember the first year I fished at Lake Mead. Water was the cleanest I'd ever seen it on Lake Mead. And I was fishing out there along this one bank and I could see the bottom, and I looked at my flasher. It was a flasher back then. It was 50 foot deep. And I'm sitting there saying, there's no way this is 50 foot deep here, because I can see the bottom. There wasn't any wind. And I could see the rocks on the bottom. I could see it it was literally like looking into a swimming pool. And sure enough, it was 50 feet deep. And I casted that little Lucky Strike razor worm out there on a Texas rig with like 8-pound line. And I said, man, I'm not going to catch nothing here. I can see the bottom. And I casted it out there, and I'm working it on the bottom, and all of a sudden I failed to strike. And it's like, what the heck? I can see everything down there. And I set the hook, and as soon as I set the hook, I could see the fish turn and flash down there in 50 foot of water. And I caught a 2-pound bass out of 50 foot of water that I couldn't even see it down there, and yet it blended in so good. So you can catch them in a wide range of water clarities with that. So anyway, guys, give them a try. I know they'll help you guys catch a lot of fish. Again, I'll link everything, my tackle warehouse link in the description, and we'll see y'all next week.